All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. I'm Andrew, aka Elendil Mindgasms, and we've got Mask AKA Tristram and the NUMENORian Centrist, my fellow fantasy nerds. And we're, of course, talking about episode 3 of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which I think is the best episode so far. And there's some really cool stuff like the NUMENORians, and we see Elendil and Isildur and what I think is going to be the reveal of Sauron at the end of the episode, but it's a cliffhanger, so we don't see who it actually is. And then we see more stuff with Nori and the Harfoots and the stranger who I think is a Maiar, and like we were talking about when we discussed episode 1 and 2, I hope it's not Gandalf, but it seems like it might be like Gandalf or Sauron or someone like that. And also, like, it seems like they didn't spell this out exactly, but it seems pretty obvious that Galadriel figured out that symbol that looks like the Eye of Sauron seems to actually be a map to what seems like where Arondir is in this episode, where he's imprisoned in what is probably going to be Mordor, I would say. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in this episode. And I mentioned last time that I was kind of bored with the first 2 episodes for parts of it, but I was definitely not bored with this one. So yeah, I really like it so far. So Tristram, you go first. What do you think what's your general impression of the episode and how it compares to the first 2? And what are some of your favorite parts?
I agree with you. I think the episode is better. I think it's more engaging. I like I said, I was already fairly positive. Like I quite like any fantasy stuff. Like, yes, give me more of this. I think there's been some amazing shots. Like, I had a kind of gasp moment when I got to see the trees, and when I got to see the Elven city last time, and the panning huge shot of Numenor was just brilliant. And I wanted Numenor to be in the show so badly. I really wanted that arc, and it's clearly there. They've got all the key players. Alfarzon is there, Elendil, Isildur. And so it's like, right, we're going to see the War of Wrath. This is all happening. Brilliant. It's exciting. So that is really great. That is really great. I will forgive lots of minor things for that. That was amazing. Visually, it was fun. I loved that, and I even loved looking at the Hall of Lore. The way that set was gorgeous to me. Really liked it.
Yeah,
really
for
liked
sure.
It. I think some of my favorite pieces was I like how they gave us the shock of the elven army that was retreating has been intercepted and all captured. So obviously, that was a surprise to me. Like, I didn't see that coming, but that's absolutely fine with the lore and with the plot. And I really felt that ramped up the tension. Like when he was captured, Arundel in the last episode, I thought, oh, he's going to be captured and he's going to be left behind. Like all the elves are retreating, thinking, oh, there's nothing going wrong here. The whole fortress had been told to pack up. And so like the humans, I thought they were all going to depart and no one would come back and look for him because he's just gone missing, one lone scout. And then to have it sprung on us that actually the entire garrison has been taken was like, oh, wow, these they really, for me, increased the danger and the fear of the orc. And I thought that was really well handled. And lastly, just I love the fact that they made the orcs' hatred and inability to abide the sun such a cool lore plot point, because it is a big deal. Like one of the reasons that Mordor in later age will have a shadow over it, like a perpetual shadow where the sun never shines, is because the orcs literally do not go out in light. And as you know, when they attack Minas Tirith, they actually extend the shadow deliberately so the army can march. And like I thought that was a lovely little lore thing where they could have just gone, look, it's going to be a pain to have the orcs not like the light, so we're just going to scrap that. And they absolutely didn't. And I really like that. So I love the lore moments. I love some of the artistic moments. And I think there is some, not necessarily across the board, but there is some good acting. I like Elendil's acting particularly. I think Arondir puts himself across and his emotions across very well. That would be I would say those were my strongest points.
Cool. Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Yeah, so Dusty, how about you? What's your general impression of the episode and how it compares to 1 and 2? And what were some of your favorite parts? I know you mentioned before that Arondir's arc in this episode is a good one. I agree.
Yes, we can obviously see that Amazon is flexing their budgetary muscles here in this episode. The vistas, I was very impressed by NUMENOR. And you could see the sets. The sets are great too. Just them walking into the throne room, you could see that they're paying detail to these things. Something that I wasn't really expecting. You do see a lot of physical sets, and I was not expecting so many physical sets to be like so many different variety of physical sets to be shown, and we got to see that this episode with NUMENOR. You know, like the little market he went to. This other character, what's his name? It starts with an H. Halbrand. This mysterious guy. That seems he has like. It seems like there's some type of mysterious backstory to this guy. He's alluded to come from some type of royalty, or possibly he might be the Sauron in disguise, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But man, there's so much going on. Unexpected garrison capture. Like I did not expect all of Arondir's homies to get scooped up by the orcs.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
Because I thought they were just like bouncing out, and he was lingering there, and he would have gotten captured because the other elves had left already. But it looks like that wasn't the case. It's possible they probably investigated the same thing that he investigated and got caught up in that. But yeah, I like that they really did pay attention to orc lore. The orcs cannot go out during the day, and we got to see that. Same thing with the
I think your audio cut out there a little, Dusty. All right. Until you come back, Dusty, I wanted to comment anyway on Halbrand. I thought it was, I forget where I heard this from, but because I watched a handful of theory videos about it, and I saw someone theorize about how maybe Halbrand is possibly going to end up being the Witch King of Angmar. I think that's an interesting theory.
Right. Well, he's clearly one of the kings of men. That's now been established, right? But one of the kings from Middle Earth, from the lands of the East. So actually, him becoming one of the eventual ring wraiths would be absolutely perfect. That's exactly what should happen. That is cool, because I'm not sure exactly who Halbrand was, and obviously he has echoes of Aragorn, doesn't he? It's like tall, a little bit like no one thinks he's much. He's just a strider, and then suddenly actually he kicks ass. And not only does he an amazing fighter, but he's also of royal bloodline, but trying to avoid it. And remember, the Aragorn in the books is not the Aragorn really that was portrayed by Viggo Mortensen. The Aragorn in the books has already gone through his arc, is already a king in waiting. He's just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. But actually, I think the arc added by Peter Jackson to Aragorn in the series does add to the value of the character, certainly for the movie. And I think they've realized that is a good one to go with. They know that the fans will like that, or they think they will. They, like the fans of the movies, I mean, who will go, oh, I recognize this arc. This is an Aragorn-like character. I can get behind this guy. Just please don't have him have a romantic relationship with Galadriel. I'm begging you.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen either.
I really don't want that to happen. But anyway, but I like what they did with him in this episode. I think Halbrand really came across well. Like the fact that he doesn't necessarily want to go back, that he's like, wow, like a nation of men that are like way better than everyone else, like where there's no like war and I can just have a job and live. And he's like, well, I do metalworking. Let's try and get in there and actually it's not easy. And he tries his little thievery and stuff, and it doesn't work out for him.
Yeah, that was a cool part
that.
of the episode when he gets into that fight and he pretends to be buddies with those guys so he can steal his seal so he can do some metalworking. And then the guy realizes that he stole his seal, so then they all come to beat him up, and then he beats the fuck out of all of them. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, but also that doesn't work out for him, right? So like,
oh yeah, of course.
Like the thing I like about this is, for a story, that's really powerful. So this person who's competent, and he is competent, he doesn't do anything that is just stupid, which I love. I hate it when main characters just do stupid stuff to make the bad things happen.
That happens a lot in horror movies. Like,
yeah,
why are you going in there? There's a fucking demon. You know there's a demon. Why wouldn't you just run?
or like in YA books where like all of them are together, and then the hero's like, I'm gonna sneak off alone and confront the bad guy on my own without telling any of you.
Yeah,
that's what a teenager would do, or whatever. But Halbrand has been clearly in a difficult situation. He's been on the shipwreck. This is his chance, so he tries to make a living with what he knows. Mm-hmm. He's blocked out by the guild system, so he tries to get around it using his skills. So he tries and fails. Then they discover him, so he like tries to talk his way out of that. Tries and fails. So then he has to fight his way out of it. And he wins the fight, but obviously loses because you can't beat the crap out of a bunch of people in this town and just expect no one to pay any attention to it, right? And you're the stranger. Of course he's going to get arrested, and he does. So I love that. It talks of consequences. It talks of like competency, but also of real challenge and reversals that build tension. I much prefer, in a way, his storyline to the way Galadriel is. But I understand Galadriel's arc because it's in line with the character they built for her. She's arrogant. She's really good at what she does, and she's truthful, but she is arrogant, and that is beginning to cost her. And so actually, her arc makes sense too. I just find it more aggravating.
Okay. But, I was thinking about exactly that yesterday when I watched Brandon Sanderson's review of episode 1 and 2. He said he made review yet. Okay. He made almost the exact same point that you just made there, that you mentioned last time about Galadriel, how we were talking about how she's a good actor and she's one of the best performances in the show, but she's kind of one-dimensional right now, and hopefully she'll have an arc where she becomes more, like you were saying, she becomes kind of more like Elrond, and perhaps they kind of switch roles a little bit and he becomes more of a warrior like her before the battle at Mount Doom in the prologue that we see in the Fellowship of the Ring. And you did there's a really funny dad joke that he made about Galadriel in episode 2. He's you know how Galadriel. Okay. I won't tell you. I won't tell you. Yeah.
And dear listeners, go watch the Intentionally Blank podcast and enjoy the joke, and then come and comment here about if it was a good one.
Yes, certainly. Dusty, is your audio back there?
Yeah, I had received the phone call while you guys doing it. But yeah, Galadriel, I think, unfortunately, her plot becomes kind of a moot point because her purpose was to see if Sauron has come back, and I think it's kind of obvious now that we have orcs in the mix here. So I think they kind of need to wrap up that portion of her plot arc, because it's almost like she's kind of behind the game at this point, and whatever she's doing is really only introducing new parts of the world, but what her quest is in itself is not actually productive at the moment.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the thing is, it is always a problem when the viewer knows a lot more than the characters, right? And we do.
Yeah.
But I did like how the symbol is Mordor. I thought that was really
cool.
Yeah.
And, I thought that was super cool.
I was thinking it was interesting that like I said, that it Galadriel seems to basically discover that the symbol is kind of like a map to Proto Mordor.
Yes.
I was kind of thinking, like theorizing in my head, that it seems with the way the plot, what's happening with the plot and the characters, that I wouldn't be surprised at all if it ends up being the case that a lot of the characters end up converging and meeting each other and unite in their struggle against Sauron, because it seems like Galadriel, if not also Halbrand, is going to go to Proto Mordor, and it seems like the stranger who seems like a Maiar is probably going to end up there, because when he came down from the sky, that fire around him was that same symbol, and Arondir is obviously already there. So I think that would be cool, and it wouldn't surprise me if that happens.
Yeah, and I absolutely like, and what I'm hoping that they'll do the Mordor thing, like in the appendices. Like, do you know what happens in the appendices? Like, so that Sauron is defeated in his fair form, kind of, and brought as a prisoner to Numenor, and that's when he then corrupts Numenor from within. They end up releasing him and actually idolizing him, and he builds up the worship of Sauron at Numenor. And that I'm hoping that they're going to do that. That they're going to have they're going to have like season 1 be like how he falls the first time, and then season 2 be how he corrupts the Numenorians and therefore the rings in the future. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But I would love that to happen, like, so much. But anyway, we'll see. So I do think that will happen. I think they'll pull the threads together and they'll have the first conflict. It is. I think Galadriel. One of the things that Galadriel thinks is that she's going to go and tell the elves the war is not over, and then the elves will bring all their reinforcements, and she will go and kick some trash with them all. Prove that everything that she has said has been right all along. But we know that Gil-galad already knows, kind of, because he saw the Cryptid Leaf and he suggested that, like, he needs her to chill for her own good. He tried to send her off to the Valinor so that she could, like, retire, but actually he knows, and we know that Gil-galad will be the one who leads the elves back to fight Mordor and Morgoth at the end. Sauron, sorry, not Morgoth. But so, like, Gil-galad is no fool. And so I think that she thinks this is a big reveal, but actually, like Dusty said, in a way, many of the big players seem to already know. And I do think that needs wrapping up now to allow her to move on to the next series of her arc, which looks like it will be her softening and going proactive with Numenor as an ally, or at least with Isildur and the elf friends. What are they called? In the books, they're called the Faithful.
Right.
That they're the Numenorians who are elf friends, the ones who haven't given up on those ideas. And so,
like Elendil in this episode.
Yeah, and his father is canon and elf friend in the appendices. Al-Farazon's father, so Elendil, the uncle, who was like in charge, was like not. Like, they really disagreed about that. And so it's like, this is right. This feels good. And as a lore guy, I really like this nod that they've given to what we know, while obviously expanding it massively and developing the characters hugely. And like Isildur has a sister. She's clearly going to have a main arc. Halbrand is brand new, or at least to me he is. But like you say, he could become one of the ring wraiths. That would be amazing. Like, bring all that on. Like, I'm ready for all that extra stuff.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to what's going to happen more so than I did so far. And it seems like in this episode they also broke up some of the characters too, which I think makes sense, because it seems like that's maybe part of the reason that the plot kind of dragged for me and some other people in episode 1 and 2, because they were basically introducing all of the characters and then had switched back and forth between them and had their plots just kind of gradually crawl forward.
Yes.
Oh, mute yourself, Dusty.
Oh, I'm
sorry.
What was I saying?
You said you're excited to see all that come to fruition.
Oh, right. And Oh, yeah. I was mentioning that. So in this episode, we don't see Elrond and the dwarves. So it seems like they're kind of going to split them up into groups, which often happens in other fantasy shows. We've seen like Game of Thrones does that too, so they can delve more deeply into the plot with each set of characters.
And that I think that was an advantage in this particular episode. I think they did better with the ones they did because they gave more time to it. I must say though, the Harfoot plot just didn't land.
Yeah. The Harfoot plot
finish.
it's still my least favorite part. Yeah, it's still they still didn't reveal who the stranger is, who is probably a Meyer, and they've teased at it for all three of the first episodes so far.
But I get that they can, because like, how would the Harfoots know? And he barely speaks, like he's only just learned the word friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but like, I get that plot. It makes sense. The idea that he might be left behind and what they've done. And like, I understand her arc. And like, if this was like a YA novel where Nori's the only and main character, and it would be like how she's overcoming her culture and going out for adventure, it could be your standard fantasy YA plot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Strange man arrives, youngling wants to outgrow her roots and try something new. Like, it could be absolutely cookie cutter, fantasy trope stuff. But the problem is that this storyline is next to all these super interesting storylines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm more interested in all the other storylines. So she's not like being a terrible actress. Like I think the world building there is great, but it's just not. I've got to admit that this episode, when that bit was on, I was just waiting for it to finish.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and my favorite part of the episode was definitely all the stuff with Galadriel and Halbrand and the Númenóreans, and all the stuff with Arondir was really cool too. But then, all the stuff with the Harfoots, I had the same feeling. I was just a little bored and like, go back to the other characters. They're way more interesting.
Agreed. And so we will see. But obviously they felt we can't have Middle-earth without hobbits. So they threw it in, and then I think they're like, we can't have Middle-earth without a wizard. So I think they did. And so in a way, I think that's a shame. I think in some ways, I think the actual story, the actual series could be better without this plot line at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there's enough going on, right?
Rid of it. They're like, I understand from a marketing perspective why they did that, but it would have been way more interesting and ballsy if they just didn't have that storyline.
I agree. And the thing is, that time, when you're in TV, right, every minute is cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all these hobbits are going to be expensive in prosthetics, just like the orcs are, in time and money and effort. So if you just eliminate that storyline, think how much more you can put into the dwarf storyline, the elf Númenorian storyline, and the elf orc storyline. Just so much more, right? We can get more building, more character work, more action sequences. And I think, like, again, there's nothing wrong with the Harfoot storyline. It's just definitely the lesser of all the storylines.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem with the Harfoot storyline is that what we saw this week was completely telegraphed. Like, there was no mystery as to what was going to happen with the Harfoots for me. We already know she was going to go and try to find out what was in the book. And I knew, because the dad had messed up his ankle, it has some type of issue. And I knew that they were going to use the stranger as a physical presence to help them, tote their caravan along. Like, all of this stuff was completely telegraphed last episode.
Yeah.
So, only thing that was surprising, I guess, to me is that Mr. Stranger just kind of plodded through the Harfoot camp and made his presence known to everybody. But then again, that had to happen if he was going to physically help them out with the caravan. So their plot was like completely not surprising. At least with the other plots, we're like, wow, we get to see Numenor. Or, oh crap, look at this fight between the enslaved elves and the orcs. But with the Harfoots, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of knew all of this was going to happen all.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was like super surprising to see elves enslaved by the orcs and basically forcing them to kind of build Proto Mordor. And we see a warg, which was cool too.
Well,
and
I love that. And the way they use the warg can go out in light. So it makes sense. Oh, this is why you breed these super vicious wolf dogs. And like that makes perfect sense. Like they can go where you can't. So let out the warg. And they also have tried to develop a few orcs into characters, right? They've given a couple of the orcs names. I watch it with subtitles. And so it's interesting when they come up with a name. It's like, this is a named orc. I get it. And so that's like added some extra, like, you know, the one who taunts them. And one of the things is that sequence had some, if I might say, Game of Thrones-esque moments, like where they just, and actually this entire episode did, like the way just as he's taunting them, and like building up the tension with having them drink the water, and then just suddenly kills one, just straight up kills them, not in like a particularly gruesome way, but just with no warning. And this helpless man who's in chains, who thinks he's fine, is suddenly dead. And remember, an elf, who would never die if allowed to just continue. And then in the fight with Halbrand, when he snaps the man's arm on the doorframe, that's a very deliberate, like, see, we can show you real combat. And
there was a little bit of brutal violence and blood in this show, which is cool because like it's cool because like it's cool to see it's cool to see the realistic consequences of violence, but without going overboard like they do with Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. But like I like that too, but Lord of the Rings is not supposed to be grimdark.
No, but it is
they
supposed
definitely
to be.
went overboard this week. We won't get into it, but they went overboard this week.
But I agree that they should be like, this is Lord of the Rings, so you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be going for like super R rating. That's not the point of Lord of the Rings. But J.R.R. Tolkien never stepped away from the consequences of war. Like he's like, no, it's horrible. And people straight up die, and it's not nice, and it is brutal. And so to show that, I think, is absolutely in keeping with the setting, but not to like dwell on like shots of people headless lolling around and blood gushing out. So that's not what it's about. This isn't a horror show. This is a fantasy show. But I actually was okay with it. I thought they hit a pretty good tone of where they're like, yep, this is real combat. There's real danger here, but at the same time, like I said about the killing of the elf, like no warning, but there's this buildup of tension. Like, why is this orc offering them water? We know he's horrible. We know he's a fiend. We know he's not really impressed with the elf's strength. Something's going to go wrong here. And at first I thought it was going to be an orc brew, because they do that to Merry and Pippin in the book.
Oh, yeah.
The orc brew. But he pours the water to show them, you see, it's not. And then he literally lulls them, and so he only does it for shock value. But that's good. That's an orcish-like thing to do. I'm all for it. The fight itself, I felt was a little cheesy, like tug of war with chains. But I will forgive it because, like, I wanted to see a combat sequence, and I particularly liked how it emphasized the lore point, which is the orcs don't go out in sunlight. I just want to quickly say there are people, I read a review that Peter Jackson basically threw that out the window. No, he didn't. Peter Jackson has orcs that are Uruk-hai. They are clearly
only the Uruk-hai go out in the sunlight because Sauron bred them to be able to go out in the sunlight.
Correct. And it even states that in the freaking film. So these reviewers who are saying that is like, oh, they've suddenly decided orcs can't go out in the sunlight, should actually watch the film and listen to the actual lore. Because actually both Peter Jackson kept to that and the Uruk-hai in the books and in the films are clearly shown to be a different breed of orc. Specifically for that purpose. So that was just stupid. Anyone who has that problem, that's wrong.
Yeah, they're orcs. They're orcs crossed with men, which is why they're taller than orcs and look a little bit more like men than regular orcs.
Yeah.
I think people get confused because in The Hobbit they're supposed to be goblins and not orcs. So when
Right.
people see them go out in the sun, they probably think those are orcs as well, but they're
But
not.
also, like, let's not rely on the Hobbit for the Tolkien lore. That, like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
the
Well,
Hobbit
I'm saying like
movies,
the people who watch the movies and try to use the
yeah,
movies specifically as they're being inconsistent.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah. Well, especially in the Hobbit movies, I
yeah,
kind of like some of these parts, but they added a whole bunch of stuff from the appendices. But
yeah,
they also invented new characters too, so like
yeah.
it's
The
not
Hobbit
definitely
movies,
not going to be canon, especially the Hobbit movies because they
they're a bit
stretched
more
out one
elastic.
book into 3 Lord of the Rings length movies instead of 3 books into 3 Lord of the Rings length movies.
Yeah. And remember, The Hobbit is nowhere near as long as any of the Lord of the Rings books.
Yeah,
I just
exactly. Yeah.
and like, yeah, I just say when watching the Hobbit movies, I always consider it a little bit elastic. Like it's not like breaking the law, but it's stretchy.
Yeah.
It's stretchy. Anyway, but so yeah, I think I think the fight scene was a little cheesy. But I thought the fight scene with Halbrand wasn't cheesy at all. I thought that was
Oh yeah.
really
That was
gritty
cool.
and cool. What do
And
you
it was
think?
cool. It was cool and epic how that elf tried to escape and got shot with arrows, and Arondir tried to escape, but he ended up failing to do so also. And before that happened, he was very smart and he like did this awesome epic leap with his
Oh, yeah.
axe to cut down like the covering so all of the orcs would burn. That was cool.
And what, by the way, one of the things, he got shot after he got over the ramparts.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
And apparently from the other direction. We don't really see who shot him, and it can be whatever they want it to be. But I tell you what I want it to be. I want it to be some men who sided with the orcs. I want it to be that some of the men from the area who have the blood of what will become, the men who supported Morgoth in the past and will support Sauron in the future. That some of them are there supporting the orcs as outriders, and so anyone who tries to escape gets shot down by them. I liked it. Again, try fail cycle, right? They tried their plan. They try and break out, and they can't. I love the fact that they were reluctant to cut down the tree. Again, I don't think they spent too long on it, but they made it a clear point that the elves are like, they see the tree as basically as valuable as an elf life. Like, this has been here longer than all of you. And like that is really brilliant because no human would take that approach. Even the most hugging human is not going to like risk being killed themselves, like to avoid cutting a tree down when they're in imprisonment. But the point is, it shows that the elves' attachment to nature is so deep. And this is even for like a warrior elf, right? They're general guy. And I also think it would be. So I like that. I like that they showed that the orcs made them do it. That the orcs like sucks to be you. Shows that the orcs are using these tunnels to get out there. Shows how it's all been thought through. It's been planned. That we can see that this is a major initiative, that they've been hiding in this area all this time. And if it is humans, that would be really cool because it shows they've been getting out their feelers and like re-recruiting kind of thing. And it would also be great pathos. Like for me, as someone who likes to read in books, I love it when there's foreshadowing that isn't like in your face obvious, like the Harfoots episode 2, and then what happens to the Harfoots in episode 3, which is not surprising. But like the general guy spoke to Arondir the previous episode and said, these people haven't changed. Like these people, and I'm talking about the people now, are still more
foreshadowing.
And then it would be great if one of them is the one who shot him. Because actually, there are some of them working with the orcs already. I think that would be quite cool.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, because we talked about how in the last episode, Bronwyn's people, who is like the love interest of Arondir, her people supported Morgoth. So yeah, that would be really cool and interesting if they end up being on the side of Sauron.
Yeah.
Do you think that was foreshadowing for what I think Halbrand is going to be? Because I swear,
I don't know.
because he kind of has that silver tongue like vibe. Like when he went into the court, he was able to like calm tensions down. He's able to fight like a badass. It's like, come on, there's something like super strange going on with this guy. Go ahead.
I absolutely agree, Dusty, and I love what Andrew said. It isn't something really that I properly considered, but when he's revealed to be a hidden king, it makes sense, right? You're like, yeah, you are like super confident, more than you would be normally, and you're super good at everything, it seems like, and like you can talk like a courtier but fight like a warrior. Yeah, actually, I do believe that you're a hidden king from the Eastern lands in Middle Earth. But also, like Andrew mentioned, that he could become, in later series, one of the kings of men who takes one of the rings and then becomes one of the Nazgûl. And I think that would be perfect.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that's totally would make sense.
Totally. I hadn't fully considered that till Andrew was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah, that would be.
Which
that
king
would be.
is the Witch King? Like, do you remember their name?
Angmar, the Witch King of Angmar.
So, what region is that like on the map?
It's where it's like when the Numenorians, after the fall of Numenor, go back to Middle Earth, they will take two areas, Arnor and Gondor, and Angmar is the bit that takes over Arnor because Arnor falls completely. It's where Aragorn is meant to be, and all that's left of Arnor is the Rangers because the actual kingdom itself falls. And you know the Watchtower of Amon Sol, that's like from that old kingdom when it used to still exist. It's like a leftover. Right. So I think that Angmar is what destroyed that kingdom. Like Witch King rising up, taking his kingdom to destroy that kingdom.
So this sounds like it's years. If this is the case, we're gonna need some time skips in this series.
Yeah, well, they're already messing with the time. They're already messing with the time.
Yeah, they are.
Because like they're squeezing things together because now we've only got Isildur's lifetime for this to all kick off. Because Elendil is in the final battle with Morgoth, with Sauron. Sorry, not Morgoth. I keep saying Morgoth. With Sauron. So basically, the several series need to happen and get to the final battle. Like I thought they might skip hundreds of years in between series. Well, that's not happening. Clearly.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I didn't think they were going to introduce Isildur and his dad so early in the series. Yeah. So I was like, oh, looks like they're gonna. It's gonna be like maybe 10 years, 20 max.
Yeah.
That they're gonna try to squeeze the story into.
Yeah. Maybe they'll also in later seasons do some flashbacks to stuff that we don't see somewhere in the timeline or even before the show starts. They could do that.
I think they're just going to sacrifice a bit of timeline in favor of plot because
I wouldn't mind that at all.
Yeah, I totally agree that for TV, you've got to make things happen, right? And in mythology, it's fine to say, and several generations passed of peace.
Right.
But in TV,
well, they did the same thing with Frodo, right?
Yeah.
Frodo was like assing around in the Shire for like 40 years.
Yeah, in the books.
Left it or whatever.
Yeah, in the books, he waits a long fucking time before he goes on his quest.
But the thing is, well, you got to remember, when Gandalf gives him the ring, he doesn't say, take this ring to Mordor and destroy it. He just says, Bilbo's ring is now yours. Keep it safe. And he goes, okay. And then Gandalf leaves for years. And only when he comes back and goes, oh my goodness, there's dark riders coming towards the Shire. You got to get out of here. That's when that happens. But they said, yeah, let's not make that take years. Let's do that straight away. And we're like, good call.
Yeah, I agree. And they still had some of the cool Shire stuff showing us how hobbits like to enjoy life and eat a lot and party with their family and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that they're just tranquil livers, right? That like the thing about the hobbits is one of the things that Tolkien I think was showing is that sometimes people who are not the rich politicians or men of war are actually in a way enjoying a better life with less because they are content and happy, even though people in their great houses might think, oh, it'd be awful to be a peasant. But actually, one of the things that he loved was the countryside around Birmingham. He thought was an amazing place, and the people who lived there. And one of the things that he mourned was the industrialization of that area, and the fact that basically the shires became everyone had to move to the big cities and become workmen in workhouses. And remember, this is the industrial era that he's talking about. The end of the 1800s, the beginning of 1900s. So he's mourning that loss of that Shire jolliness.
Yeah.
And that's one of his themes. So I think that's one of the reasons why I understand the inclusion of the Harfoots, because I think that's one of the things they're going for here. Here are these free, not really worried people who just wander around, don't really get involved. And he wants to show they showrunners want that nod to Tolkien.
Yeah, that makes sense too. That they would be kind of like forest dwellers and really attached to nature, because you see that a lot with their characters, like you were mentioning there.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So,
who's your favorite?
Go ahead.
Who's your favorite character? Both of you, like in this episode specifically.
In this episode? Yeah. In this episode? Oh, in this episode, yeah, my favorite character is definitely Elendil. I really like seeing Elendil and seeing what they're doing with him and how much they're revealing.
Cool. Dustin?
What about?
I know that Rondir wasn't on camera too much this.
But he was still one of the arcs.
Yeah, but he said like 3 words. Most of it was kicking.
He's kind of the strong silent type, though.
That's right. Like he was on camera plenty. He just didn't talk on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked how I know it seemed a bit goofy to you, but I liked the whole, the focus on the chain. Like it seemed very kung fu to me. Like how they did that particular fight. Because in Kung Fu, they often divert the audience's attention to an object that people are kind of fighting over. In this case, it was a chain. Like if you take a Jackie Chan movie, he might pick up a table and then like hit a guy, flip it or the table around and start hitting people with like the legs, and then flip it around and then jump on top of it. Like it seemed kind of like that with the chain in this episode. So it's like, I think they're kind of taking some cues here from Kung Fu movies. But I know they didn't go like super goofy with that aspect.
Yeah.
But
they weren't trying to be like
they
weren't trying to be deliberately cheesy like a Jackie Chan movie.
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't want no trouble.
They were trying to be inventive, and I think they succeeded. And I think it made the lore point. But I just thought, well, come on, orcs. But absolutely. And the thing is, like I said, at least it wasn't just yet another sword fight, or yet another people shooting. They deliberately went for something different. And one of the reasons that those Kung Fu movies have done so well is they are continually reinventing how to have a martial arts fight and make it interesting. And one of the reasons Jackie Chan is one of the legends of cinema is that he kept retrying new things. Like, how can I do this with a beanpole? How can I do this with a stool? I remember watching him do a fight once with a stool, like one of those long kneeling stools. He did everything with that stool. He kicked it, spat on it, used it to block. It was amazing. And so I get that. I think that's a really interesting comparison, Dusty. So would you say that even in this one, Arondir's character development is still your favorite, and you found that the most interesting and good part of the episode?
Well, I like that part because it was such of an emotional roller coaster. It seemed clear that, man, these orcs can't even go out in the sun. You know, the sun seems like the elves have this in the bag. And then as it gets to the end, we're like, oh man, they totally got defeated. And I was not really expecting that at all. It seemed like he would have been able to get away given the circumstances. That, oh yeah, orcs can't go in the sun. How hard is it going to be to get away from these guys? And then he climbs the little hill, and then everything around him's like destroyed. And you could see some figures kind of jumping off and cheering. Can't really see exactly what or who they are, but there's definitely people around the edges of this this field that got completely chopped down. So you're like, oh man, it's way worse than what we expected. As soon as he sees over that hill, I was like, oh yeah, it's not as easy as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I really like. I think that's really good, especially if they are fallen men. I think that would be a great point.
That would be really cool. For them to
reveal that in a future episode would be great.
Do you think? Does it seem likely to you also, Dusty, that the character they will reveal in Arondir's plotline at the end of this episode is going to end up being Sauron?
Adar?
I don't think so.
No?
Like, it might just be like a head orc of some sort.
Okay.
I don't know what it's good.
Didn't
he kind of had a blurred out.
Orc, though.
And it's an elf name.
Yeah.
That's why I think
I don't know.
It could be, but they could also introduce new characters because they will not want Sauron to be the only real big bad guy, will they? They'll want him to have some arch lieutenants. Like that's why they made up like the white orc and stuff in the Hobbit movies. That you need some kick-ass lieutenants, and we don't have the Nazgul; they don't exist yet. So it could be the proto mouth of Sauron, I suppose. But I think they could definitely have created some people. We'll see. But I am tempted to think it'll be Sauron. If they go with the arc from the Appendices, which is that the Numenorians and the elves come over, they kick, they fight, and they win, and they take Sauron to Numenor in chains, and then he charms them from within as a prisoner. They end up releasing him, and he ends up becoming, the fair-voiced. He pulls them into his way of thinking from within. So if they do that, I think Adar could totally be the villain, the Sauron villain. But then he's like, oh, I was just manipulated by the Dark One, and then drops in the clues to Arphaes on the elves have immortality, and they're unfairly hiding it from you. They're being selfish, and then Arphaes will. Oh, you know what? If they do the great armament where Numenor actually tries to take on the elves and tries to set a fleet against them, I would just love to see that.
That would be awesome. I really want to see that arc with Sauron too, how he gets captured and corrupts the Numenorians. If it turns out that Adar is not Sauron, that makes it seem more likely that people might be correct that it turns out that Halbrand is actually Sauron in disguise, because we know he's charismatic and he's already there in Numenor, and maybe he went with Galadriel. Well, I guess he couldn't have known that they would have been picked up by Numenorians.
He can, if he's Sauron, he can make anything happen.
True.
But also, one thing in favor of Halbrand being Sauron is that he is a smith.
Yeah, true. Yeah, good point.
Which sets up the whole, I'll help you make rings. And obviously,
I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
He befriends Galadriel, and guess who Galadriel's best mate is Elrond. And then Elrond's like, I'm working with this super project on rings. And she's like, well, you need human help, right? And
do you
have anyone who could help? And she's like, well, I've got this great guy who saved my life, and he's good at smithing.
Yeah,
So
that would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
We shall see. But anyway,
we figured it out.
well, I don't know if
Yeah.
we have, but it's going to be interesting. But you know what? I'm up for it, and I'm up for being excited. I'm up for being surprised. I'm up for the theory crafting. I hope they keep us guessing. I hope they keep having good lines.
Yeah.
I do hope
it would be interesting no matter where they go with Halbrand's character, really, whether he turns out to be Sauron or whether he turns out to be the Witch King of Angmar or maybe even one of the other Nazgul, or he could just be a new character.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think he pretty much has to go evil though, right?
Yeah, it seems that way. Yeah.
But it's going to be really interesting. And I think, what do you think about the king? So, I mean, Tar Miriel and the king of, like, Tar Miriel is the princess, the regent. So now I think they've taken some liberties with her character. So we'll see. We'll see how that's going to fly. But like, is she actually as anti-elf as she appears, or is she kind of more like her father, but when he's out of commission and now her cousin, who's that like chancellor guy, is got so much influence that basically she feels like she's under his sway, and so she's hiding her pro-elfness? Or are they going to play it that she is as anti-elf as she appears? I wonder how they're going to play her character.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I think that's true, because if you think about it, only thing she did was to have Elendil watch Galadriel, and that's it. And why are you going to send someone who is
pro-elf,
basically pro-elf, to do that? So I kind of do get that it wouldn't make sense if someone was a hardliner anti-elf for them to give someone who's a pro-elf this assignment. You know?
And remember, she kind of promoted him to do that as well. Like he says, that he's been given a promotion in order to be able to be the person who's assigned to watch Galadriel. He, by the way, is my favorite character in this episode. I think Elendil is extremely well done. I love the actor who's portraying him. I mean, he's not 7'3", I'll tell you that. But I'm prepared to let that pass in favor of good acting.
Yeah,
because
it's like how in the Wheel of Time, it's not as if all the main Taveran males are like 6'3" or whatever.
No, very much not. What do you think about the inclusion of Isildur's sister?
I know that's not canon, I think,
no,
right?
Sorry, let me explain what I meant. I don't mean on like a political, like they've included another female character. I mean, like, what do you think she'll do in the plot? What do you think what do you think they've inserted her to do?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like, if I had to guess, I would say that it seems like she's supposed to be connected with Isildur's narrative since she's his sister. So maybe it's going to be the case that she kind of encourages him to end up fulfilling his destiny or whatever, where he ends up, maybe like fighting Sauron and then getting the ring and then getting corrupted by it.
Maybe like a moral compass, because it seems like the dad is very set in his ways and what he wants his son to do.
Yeah.
And it seems like the sister is more supportive of Isildur's independence. So I think there's probably just going to be like some push and pull between these two characters, and then Isildur just going to have to figure it out in between that.
That makes sense.
Can I make a prediction?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I hereby predict that she becomes one of the Nazgul.
Oh, so? That would be cool.
Yeah, because they're going to go for royal bloodline, right? When they go back as Numenorians, and she won't get it because she's not the son. Okay, so Isildur will be the heir, and yet it's established in this that she's been accepted to the guild, right? that she's got all this potential, that she's super clever, that and I think she's going to have they're going to be good, right? The 9 kings at first. And I think she will be one of the 9 kings of men, because Nazgul could easily have been women. They can easily get away with that because they could just say, well, they're ring wraiths. You can't tell if they're male or female.
Right.
They can just and so she was a queen who went evil. And that completely goes with their whole, let's try and make this a little bit more 2022 version of Tolkien. And also it allows them to throw in a surprise, use a really integral character, and for plot reasons, it can really hit, it's his sister who's and she can be really good and for them and using the ring of men for power for good reason and then be corrupted. And that can be foreshadowing that eventually Isildur will, of course, be corrupted by a ring.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what will happen.
That's interesting. And that could even work with the language technically too, because it's set in medieval times or so, humanity are called the race of men. So feasibly the one of the men who has one of the rings of power could be female.
The 3 rings that are given to elves. Yeah. And it says in the actual chant, elf lords under the sky. And guess what? One of them's Galadriel for sure. We know it. That's canon. And so I wouldn't have a problem with it. We don't know who these 9 kings are. They're never really explained apart from the Witch King of Angmar. It would be really cool to see those 9 really fleshed out. And we're going to see the 7 of the Dwarf Lords. And I will eat my hat if one of those doesn't go to one of those dwarven women. I will eat.
That would be cool.
I will eat a hat. It's going to happen because they want it to happen and because there is an enthusiasm for that. But the point is, this is what they've got to play with. They've got to use the points that they can play with, right? That's where they can have their surprises, their shocks, one of the things that we said is part of the reason the Harfoot storyline isn't interesting to us is there's no surprise. We want surprise. We want there to be reveals, and the rings should be revealed. It should be wow, didn't see that coming. That's so cool what that can do. I've always imagined the Rings of Power could do cool stuff, and we never get to see it in the books. This is their chance to blow that stuff up. But I think her inclusion is potentially for that reason.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. It would piss people off who are pissed off about it not being canon and stuff, but people get way carried away with that. I definitely understand that there are definitely some reasonable objections with how far outside of the canon it goes. Correct. But a lot of the times, when I see people make videos criticizing it, they just obsess over the fact that there are any black characters. Because it's supposed to be an Anglo-Saxon mythology, therefore they should all be white.
Yeah, but we're way past that. But I do worry, I do, I do, because I like my books and I like my lore, and I don't see the flipping king of the Numenorians better be black, or at least his wife better have been black, because if they have 2 completely white parents with this black princess, I'm going to be annoyed.
That wouldn't make sense. Yeah.
At least, but there is British adverts, I kid you not, on TV where there is a black dad, a white mom, and Chinese kids. I kid you not.
That's one of the things that bothered me about that new Resident Evil show. So Albert Wesker is black, and then he has an Asian kid and a black kid, but they're also twins. Yeah. Sorry, Dusty, little spoiler for the show there, but that just didn't make sense.
I'm just I'm all for your diversity, but let's have some Chinese English families in entirety. That's okay. But constantly saying, look how freaking diverse we are is not useful on its own. But if she's got, and I think she was introduced in this episode as if she is a main character. She looks like she's going to have a plot. She looks like she's going to be a balance to Isildur and her dad. and she's going to look like she's going to be basically react to his parenting in a different way from the way Isildur is reacting. So I think she looks like she could be a really interesting character. And like a couple of times, it's shown that the three of them are all good people, but don't necessarily react well together. So like, even though they're not directly hostile. So for example, even the little joke when she comes to meet him from the ship and he goes to hug the horse instead of her. And like, as if she's almost not there. And then later on with their father, he is so happy to hear her news that Isildur just kind of disappears in the background. And then he finds out it was Isildur who recommended she go back and try again. And so it's like, they're all good for each other, but they're all missing points. And that is an interesting family dynamic for me. And so those three, I find the best. I find that the best character interaction on the show so far. Better than Galadriel, better than the Harfoots, better than the elf who says 3 lines. I like their interaction the most.
All right.
Yep. Any thoughts, Dusty, on things that we've not covered that you noticed or that enjoyed, or were like, or do you have any things that you were worried about or that you think wasn't done well?
No, I thought everything was done pretty well. I liked that there's more to the Numenorian island than the Numenorian city proper. Like we have more than just this big honking city with all this modern amenities for their time period. And then you go out and you see, okay, there's like other entities here. There's like this archive that was built by. You said it was built by elves, right?
Yeah. Well, all of Numenor was originally built by elves, right?
Okay.
It was the elves' gift to them, and they've only turned their back on the elves in recent centuries. But like obviously for humans, recent centuries is a long time. And you might think, isn't it a bit odd then that the king is pro-elf? But he's actually deliberately made that decision during his lifetime that he's going to be pro-elf and like make that move to become one of the I forgot the word for them again. The faithful, who are the new minority. And clearly Elendil is being set up as one of the faithful.
Yeah, the set for Numenor was really good too. It reminded me of the Lord of the Rings movie. It was a really beautiful set.
And specifically the one that like Dusty mentioned, like the House of Lore. I love that set. That was a physical set and it looked amazing.
Yeah, it did.
Scrolls, and I was like, yes, I want more of this.
Yes.
It also seems like we're probably going to get to see Narsil either getting forged or handed over.
Oh, yeah, especially because if we see that battle in the prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring, he has to use Narsil to cut the ring from Sauron's hand, right?
The shards, yeah. I'm positive we will see the forging of Narsil. Maybe by Halbrand, right?
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
That'd be really interesting if they made that twist.
And it should be forged by an elven smith. Come on. Got to be at least elven. You know, you gotta have the high quality if you're gonna have a freaking magic sword. But I think we can all agree a good episode, and I think a step up from the first two, and I wasn't really disappointed with them. But this was by far my favorite.
Yeah. One of the things too, this episode kind of cements the plot, because before this episode, it was really ambiguous on where they were going. But now that they added Numenor and we have these two named characters, we're like, okay, we know where this is going now.
Yeah, for sure.
And like our phase on being in, I'm like, yay. The counselor, because that's all the beginning of that means they're definitely going to do some of the intrigue stuff, which I am very up for. Like unlike maybe the majority of the watchers of the show, I'm in it for the intrigue. I want that stuff. I want the lore. So like some of my highlights were like seeing him. And I'm like, oh, I hope they're going to do the forced marriage thing. So then he can be like conniving away, wanting eternal life and like have the fall. I want that so much. And when I saw the orcs having to be super inventive to be able to stay in the shade, but control slaves in the open. And it also answers one of the big answers, which is why don't the orcs just kill all the elves? Why don't they just kill all the humans? Then you'd have to risk them getting away, right? But actually, they need them to work in the daylight.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, this is great. Like, I don't need it to be perfect. I mean, this is fantasy, but I love the fact that there's been a little bit of thought from the showrunners. Why are the orcs gathering slaves? Actually, there's a very good reason, because it's much, much easier for the slaves to work in the daylight. And the orcs can use these super long chains to control them. And if they do get out, they've got a couple of outriding humans and some wargs that can stop that happening. But I really like that. It gives an impression of realism that I can then suspend my disbelief and just go, that's the way it is, and just be in the story, which I think is great. Because at first, when they're captured, I'm just like, why have you not murdered them, orcs? Come on, murder those guys. But now they gave me a reason to believe.
It's not that that Arondir survived just due to plot armor. He can't die. He's one of the main characters.
No, but it looks like they had a point. And so he kills one elf to kind of make his point. That'll get them all scared and get them back in line. And then the other elf, when he makes his escape and they think he's really getting away, they shoot that guy down. And you're like, yep, I'm with you now. I see it. I believe it. I'm part of it. And I think that's really good. And so, props to you, showrunners. Thank you for giving me something I can suspend my disbelief and go, right, that's cool lore, not just plot armor. I'm really interested to see how the healer comes into it. What do you bet that she and her son are the ones who rescue Arondir?
That would be interesting. I was wondering about that. I was just thinking, like, it seems more likely that they're going to go more into the romance between Arondir and Bronwyn.
Yeah.
And it would and also similarly, if it turns out that Halbrand is evil in some way, like he's secretly Sauron, or he's a Witch King of Angmar, or he's one of the other Nazgul, that would be more of a reason for there to not be a romance between him and Galadriel, because that we don't really need more than one main romance in the show. I think
we don't, but there will be, but we don't. But I completely agree, Andrew, and I think Bronwyn and her son will rescue him for sure, and the reason is, well, one of the reasons is, one, she's one of the people who will notice that he's gone missing. Like, she'll be one of the ones who goes, hang on a minute, they were supposed to come, they never came. But her son also has a cool evil magic sword, which can help them. But one of the big things for me is that it's the trope, right? Instead of the man rescuing the woman rescuing the man, and they will love that trope, and that will work very nicely and very neatly, and it will work with the plot as well. And it's realistic. It's needed. He needs rescue. And I'm sure once he's assisted, he can help himself, but he needs someone to come for him. And so it's not going to be his buddies, because the key buddies that we'd seen are now all dead. Both his buddy who went with him to the village, we've seen him killed on screen, and his commander, the other named elf, has been killed on screen. So it's not going to be the elven garrison free themselves. It's either he's going to do a solo run, or the only other people we've seen named are Bronwyn and her son. They're going to come for him. I think that's happening, and I think that will be exciting, and I think there'll be human traitors from that village, and I think there'll be human loyalists. And then I also think her son will start off as one and become the other. And so,
interesting.
That
would be really cool.
That's great, right? That's conflict. That's what we need in the show. We need conflict, which is why the failures of Halbrand were so interesting. That's why the failures of Galadriel were so interesting, because conflict is what will drive this show. And will keep us interested. And up to now, there was more real conflict in this. Like the conflict in episode 1 was like, I think there are orcs. Yeah, we don't think there are. Yeah, but there are. Oh, look, an ice troll. And then the conflict in episode 2 was, I don't want to go to heaven. Okay, I'm not going to go to heaven. Right, hang on. I'm swimming a lot, lots of water, underground whale, maybe, that probably swimming.
The sea monster.
Yeah, but it's not even a malevolent sea monster. It's just swimming around.
Yeah.
And it's so big, it might crush you without realizing it. Like, it's not hungry, and it's not Jaws. And like, that was the conflict. And I'm like, come on. Oh, and also, like, you didn't come to my wedding was the other conflict.
Oh, yeah.
And so the conflict in this episode
was and also, let's have a rock-breaking contest.
Yeah. But the thing is, the conflict in this episode, like Dusty said, it was plot-related. It was, like, intense. It was meaningful. I was so much more there for it. And I hope that this is now that they've spent their time, they've established the characters, I hope now this is the plot we can follow. We can wrap up Galadriel's like, no one knows if it's there or not, but yeah, it is there. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, okay. And I think and like I said, it seems likely, and I think it would be really cool if this happens, if it turns out that, like, well, like you were alluding to there, we kind of know where the plot is going now, where it seems like all the characters are going to end up converging on Proto Mordor, and that's going to end up they're going to have to end up working together in some fashion. That would be really interesting.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed too is that this series they do very well with their cliffhangers, like compared to another fantasy series that we're watching.
The
cliffhangers in this show are excellent. Like the last little tidbit that happens in the end, you're like, I want to know what's going to happen in the next episode.
Yeah.
I haven't really gotten to that level quite yet with House of the Dragon. It seems that they're not quite as good with those cliffhangers as they are here. There was a decent one last episode, the episode before last, but it seems like all of these episodes that we're getting from the Rings of Power have a really good cliffhanger at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
All I would say on that is I see what you're saying, but I just hope it doesn't become tropey, like because they're doing a lot of this, and someone walks in who's out of focus.
Who is it?
Someone walks in, also out of focus. Stop. And so it's like, Adar, who's that? Stop. Walks in. It's the Dwarf King, maybe. Stop. It's like, oh my goodness. I'm like, stop doing that. It's like they heard a knock at the door and the door opened and stop. I prefer to say the door opened and in rode the Black Knight. He said, I'm now going to kill you. That's the place to stop.
Oh, okay.
Or you can do both, but if it's always the new character break, that becomes tropey for me. And I hope that they don't just do that to death, because I think we've had quite a bit of that, at least a few times in these first 3 episodes. So I hope that they don't. I hope that isn't their only cliffhanger.
I didn't even notice that until you mentioned it, but that's a good point.
I don't mind as long as they stay truthful with it, because there are some shows that I watch that the next time on, those types of things. No, there's like the show that I watch. It's like a reality show. And oftentimes the next time on is like the opposite of what actually happens.
Yeah.
They just edit it to a degree while you're thinking that there's some conflict coming up, but it's like, oh, damn producers editing it to make it look like it was going to be something it wasn't. I'm saying as long as they stay truthful to what they're going to portray, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah, as long as Adar turns up in the next episode and we see what he's doing. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I
It's
hope that, like,
fine,
in the
just don't
next
give it the time.
episode or soon, we finally figure out who the stranger is with Nori and, like, whether he's a Maiar, one of the Blue Wizards. I hope
I
they
have
don't,
some
like...
feeling that that's going to be like a season-ending secret. Like, they're probably not going to reveal that till the end of the season.
I think that's a long...
So for the whole season, they're gonna have, hey, this guy's going around with Nori and stuff. That's basically all that happens.
Right, I think so. Like, what are they going to do with... I can't imagine at this point what they're going to do with these characters yet.
I think that they will that they will like Andrew said. I think it will be Lord of the Rings assemble.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the case, but their plot line for this season, like, I'm not sure what's going to happen to the Harfoot plot line. The only prediction I have is by the end of the season, at the season finale, is when they're going to reveal the identity of the stranger. Or maybe even they'll write it out till next season and like keep that as the season
I hope they don't do that.
They might keep it as a season cliffhanger. Who knows?
And say, by the end of the season, he'll have learned to speak English.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was good. I think that I hope it will stay slow burn. But I'm just very aware that, like, they don't have like 20 episodes, do they?
Mm-hmm. No, it's going to be like 8, like Wheel of Time.
Whereas, like Game of Thrones, how many episodes did they have a season?
I think they had 8.
Just 2 more.
Oh, okay. 10? Yeah, except for the last season, they had only 6 or something like that. But they were like an hour and a half long each instead of an hour.
Longer.
Yeah.
It's just, that's like one of the things. Is one of the things I loved about what I got from my impressions of Game of Thrones from series 1 was this slow burn, development.
Yeah, it was a bit slower. Yeah,
and this is trying to do that, at least in part. And when I appreciate that, I do. I'm totally up for that, as long as it's properly paid off. And like Wheel of Time, right? I'm a big fan of that series. Probably my favorite standalone complete book series of all time. And it is an incredibly slow burning series. We don't get some of the payoffs for Rand until 6 books in.
And a large part of the plot only takes, for several books, only a couple of months pass or something like that, right?
Yeah. But, you could be Romeo and Juliet and have like 3 days pass and have your entire story in 3 days.
True. Yeah.
Or do Brandon Sanderson and declare in book 4 that there's 10 days before the end of the world, and then say you've got a book 5.
Yeah.
A 1,000-page book 5 apparently going to take place in a very short time frame. But we'll see.
And it's supposedly going to be the longest one in the series so far.
Well, it's Sanderson. Does he ever get shorter? I'm excited. I hope they do build it up. I hope there is twists. I hope there is surprises. And I think that they know enough about screenwriting and storytelling that they know that's how they'll make their money. And so I think there will be. I think some of these people that have been set up as good guys will turn to evil for sure. I don't think the Harfoots will, though.
Me neither.
That other thing is, I think that there will be no Harfoots that go evil at all. And if I was the showrunner, I would have no elves turn either, because if they do, there will be a little fan outcry that they just don't need to deal with.
I think this would be cool, although I highly doubt it's going to happen. I think it would be cool if people are right that the stranger ends up being Sauron in disguise, and then he kills Nori and her friend. Just because I don't like the Harfoots, but I kind of doubt that's going to happen.
And then he discovers that hobbits exist in several centuries.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, if you really want to just make everyone super mad, Nori's little mate Poppy, she should become one of the elven lords and get one of the rings. Then people would be ticked off.
Yeah, that wouldn't even make sense.
Or maybe they could give her one of the dwarf rings. And she's like, they're both short. They're the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
If they do that, or if they make her Gollum, I'm going to cry. No, Gollum.
Yeah, me too. Oh, that would be terrible.
Gollum better not.
Gollum.
Gollum shouldn't come into it at all.
No, he shouldn't.
I don't think they'll be able to resist. I don't think they'll be able to resist. I think in later seasons they'll bring in Gollum because they can't leave it alone because they think, oh, Gollum.
Yeah.
But I'm praying for them. Maybe that won't happen.
How could you like you can't?
I think they
you
might
can't
get a
top
Gollum,
Andy
but not a
Serkis.
Gollum.
Yeah, you can't top Andy Serkis's performance.
You can't, and also just like he's one of the most. I don't know if the right word is beloved, but a load of people will tell you
iconic.
Yeah, iconic.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the right word. He is one of the most iconic characters, and a lot of people who you talked about Lord of the Rings, if you ask them who their favorite character is, obviously Sam is by far people's favorite character in Lord of the Rings, but a lot of people will say Gollum. More people will say Gollum than say Gandalf because they find him interesting. And so, and this is, I'm talking from the book, and I think Andy Serkis made him maybe even more interesting in his portrayal because Andy Serkis really makes you believe in the dual personality of Gollum.
Yeah, especially when they have those split screen parts where they're going back and forth between his two personalities, Gollum and Smeagol, and he's arguing with himself. That's brilliant in the movies.
It is, and like there's some parts. So I know that Gollum is just very tempting, just like Gandalf is very tempting.
Yeah,
because it's a money making scam. But I really
and the Harfoots.
I really, really hope they don't do Gollum because the point is that the ring has to be lost. So Elendil's line has it. He's shot. It goes into, and it's lost for like, it's meant to be like generations. And then picked up by Smaug folk. But anyway,
after Isildur loses it, hundreds of years pass before Gollum gets it.
But I think it might
maybe they'll bring in, they could bring in Samuel instead.
Really?
The sword of truth.
Oh,
wannabe Gollum.
Do not.
Anyway, that'd be terrible.
Let's not go on another tangent. Let's wrap it up.
All right. Yeah.
Any other thoughts that you didn't get? Anything else that you wanted to discuss, Andrew? I know that like this is your show.
No, I think we pretty much discussed everything I had in mind and a lot more. I liked all the theorizing we did. That was fun. So, yeah. Anything else you wanted to discuss about it, Dusty?
No. I think I got all I thought was worth bringing up out. I tried to show you how badass Arondir was, and I think I did a good job at that. I know you guys love the NUMENOR arc. I thought that was awesome too. Yeah. But I was like, man, this the emotions here for this Arondir arc are pretty intense.
Definitely.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. This is fun as always. And yeah, let's talk about episode 4 after it comes out. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Share this everywhere. Subscribe to the channel. Click that like button. Click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. We'll be talking about episode 3 and 4 of House of the Dragon next week because Chris wasn't available this weekend. So look forward to that as well. And check out my Patreon page too. The link is in the description as always. And if you give me $10 a month, you can vote on future topics, books, and movies that are discussed on here. So, and yeah, like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And watch the Lord of the Rings show. It's I understand why people have problems with it, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Unless you're going to go on and on and on about how there shouldn't be black characters and stuff, I'll probably ignore those comments. And yeah, and of course, read the Lord of the Rings books. And if you want to read the appendices too, to follow more of what's happening in the show and some of the Silmarillion, like you mentioned earlier, Tristram, they are definitely way more dry than the Lord of the Rings books. But that's where they are expanding on it a lot, but that's where a lot of the backstory from the show is going on. And yeah, anything else you guys want to say before we end it there?
It's all good.
All right.
No, we're good.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Fun as always. And adios until next time, everyone.
Ciao.
Yep.